The first $100,000 changes more than your bank account. It changes the way you think about money. Hitting 6 figures is a huge milestone. You worked for it. You saved for it. And for a moment, it feels like you've made it. But here's the part nobody talks about. Reaching $100,000 is often when people start making their biggest financial mistakes. They spend more, take bigger risks, and start believing the hard part is over. One of these mistakes can quietly cost you more than $1 million. And most people don't realize they're making it until it's too late. The problem is that these mistakes don't feel like mistakes. They feel smart. They feel like progress. They feel like a reward for years of discipline. Today, we're going through 7 mistakes people make after reaching $100,000 net worth. And the last 2 are the ones almost nobody sees coming. Mistake number 1. I made it. I can slow down now. This is the most common one, and it's sneaky because it doesn't feel like quitting. It feels like relaxing. You hit $100,000, and some part of your brain says, okay, I built the base. Now I can ease off. Maybe skip a few months of investing. Maybe stop maxing out contributions. Let's look at what that actually costs you. Say you have $100,000 invested, and you never add another dollar. Growing at an average 8% return over 30 years, that turns into roughly $1 million. Sounds great, right? Now compare that to a second version of you. Same $100,000 starting point, same 8% return, same 30 years. But this version keeps contributing $1,000 a month. That version ends up with about $2.47 million. Same starting point, same market, same amount of time. The only difference is one person kept going and one person stopped. And that gap is over $1.4 million. $100,000 isn't the finish line. It's actually the point where compounding starts to matter the most, because now you have a real base for growth to work on top of. Stopping now is like getting the car up to highway speed and then taking your foot off the gas. You'll still coast for a while. It'll feel fine at first, but you're losing momentum the entire time, and you won't notice how much until years later when you check the numbers and wonder where that extra million went. Picture 2 friends who both hit $100,000 the same month. One keeps investing $1,000 every month without fail. The other says, I've earned a break, and just lets the account sit. 10 years later, they'll still look similar on paper. 20 years later, the gap becomes obvious. 30 years later, one of them retires comfortably, and the other is still working. Same starting line, completely different finish. Number 2, thinking you're now an expert. This one is about ego, and it creeps in fast. Here's how it usually goes. You build your first $100K the boring way. ETFs, index funds, steady monthly contributions, nothing exciting. Then you hit the number, and suddenly you start thinking, I clearly know what I'm doing now. So you branch out, individual stocks, crypto, options, maybe some leverage. But here's the thing, people miss. Saving money and investing money are 2 completely different skills. If you contributed $1,000 a month for 7 years, that's about $84,000 out of your own pocket. A huge chunk of that first $100K came from you simply putting money in consistently, not from picking winning investments. The market did help, but your own contributions did most of the heavy lifting. The trap is that during a bull market, basically everything goes up. Your index funds go up. Your random stock picks go up. Even bad decisions look good for a while. And your brain quietly whispers, maybe I'm actually a genius at this. You're probably not. You were just in a market that was going up. If you want to experiment with individual stocks or higher-risk plays, that's fine. Just keep it small. Somewhere around 5 to 10% of your portfolio is a reasonable ceiling. Keep the core boring. Let the boring part do its job. Think of it like a chef who spent years perfecting one great dish. That dish, made the same careful way every time, is what built the restaurant's reputation. Then, one good year, the chef gets confident and starts throwing out the recipe, experimenting live on paying customers. Sometimes that pays off, but the reputation was never built on improvisation. It was built on consistency. Your investing story is the same. The consistency got you here. Don't confuse a lucky stretch for a new skill set. Number 3. Optimizing the wrong thing. Once people hit $100K, they suddenly become obsessed with tiny details. Should this fund be 0.03% or 0.07% expense ratio? Should I rebalance my allocation by 2%? Is there a slightly better tax strategy? None of this is bad to think about, but people spend hours agonizing over decisions that barely move the needle. Here's some perspective. If you somehow squeeze out an extra 1% return on a $100,000 portfolio, that's about $1,000 a year. Now compare that to a $10,000 raise at work. That's $10,000 a year. A $20,000 raise is $20,000 a year. At the $100K stage, your income usually has way more leverage than fine-tuning your portfolio ever will. If you're spending your evenings comparing expense ratios, but you haven't asked for a raise in 3 years, you're optimizing the wrong thing. It's a bit like someone who spends an entire weekend trying to save $5 on groceries by driving to 3 different stores while ignoring a side project that could bring in an extra $1,000 a month. The $5 feels productive because it's measurable and immediate. The bigger opportunity feels vague, so it gets ignored. Don't let the easy, visible optimization distract you from the harder, more valuable one. Number 4. Falling for sophisticated financial products. Once you have $100K, suddenly everyone wants to help you invest it. You'll start getting calls, DMs, maybe even friends of friends who are in finance now. And the pitch is almost always some version of the same idea. You're too successful for simple index funds now. You need something more sophisticated. What they usually mean is something with higher fees. Let's put fees into real numbers. $100K growing at 8% for 30 years gets you close to $1 million. Growing at 7% instead, just 1 percentage point lower, which is a totally normal fee difference, gets you closer to $761,000. That's a difference of about $239,000 from 1%. Whole life insurance is a classic example of this. Your premium gets split 3 ways. Part covers the actual insurance, part covers commissions, and part goes into a cash value account that usually grows slowly. For a lot of people, a much simpler and cheaper approach is buying inexpensive term insurance and investing the difference themselves. It's not the right call for everyone, but it's worth understanding what you're actually paying for before you sign anything. Here's a simple 2-question filter before buying any financial product. 1. Can I explain what this does in 2 sentences? 2. Is the person selling it to me a fiduciary, meaning they're legally required to act in my best interest? If the answer to either one is shaky, slow down. Here's the pattern to notice. The moment your net worth becomes visible, a new car, a nicer neighborhood, a LinkedIn update, the products marketed at you get more complicated and more expensive. That's not a coincidence. Complexity is often just a way to hide the price tag. The simplest product in finance tend to be the cheapest, and the cheapest products tend to perform the best over time, precisely because fees are the one thing that reliably eats into returns year after year, no matter what the market does. Number 5. The 100K is magic trap. There's a famous idea, often credited to Charlie Munger, that your first $100,000 is the hardest part, and after that, compounding just takes over. People hear that and assume 100K is some kind of magic number where investing suddenly becomes easy. It's not quite that simple. Here's a way to think about it instead. Take your annual contribution and divide it by your expected return. That tells you roughly the portfolio size where your investment growth starts to match what you're personally putting in. For example, if you're contributing $20,000 a year and expecting an 8% return, divide $20,000 by 8%. That gives you $250,000. At around $250,000, 8% growth on that portfolio equals about $20,000, the same as what you're contributing yourself. That's the point where your money genuinely starts pulling its own weight alongside you. So the real number isn't necessarily 100K. It depends on how much you're contributing, what return you're getting, and how much time you've got. For some people, that turning point is $150,000. For others, it's $400,000. Know your own number instead of chasing someone else's. This matters because a lot of people hit 100K. Remember the famous quote, and then quietly expect the market to start doing all the work from here. When it doesn't, when they still need to keep contributing to see real movement, they feel discouraged, like something went wrong. Nothing went wrong. The quote was never a guarantee. It was a description of momentum, not a countdown timer. Know the math behind your own situation, and you won't be caught off guard. Number 6. Panicking. Over big dollar losses, your portfolio didn't become riskier. Your brain just started seeing bigger numbers. When your portfolio was 100K, a 2% drop was $2,000. A 3% drop was $3,000. Annoying, but manageable. Now imagine a $10 million portfolio. A 1% drop, there is 100K. Same percentage move, but the dollar figure looks terrifying. The math hasn't changed. The market moved the same relative amount either way, but our brains are wired to react to big numbers, not big percentages. So people start thinking, how many months of work would it take me to earn that $3,000 back? Instead of just recognizing, this is a normal 3% dip. That kind of thinking leads to bad habits. Checking your portfolio constantly, seeing red, getting anxious, and eventually selling at the worst possible time. And here's the part that makes it worse. Some of the market's best days and worst days happen close together. Sell during a scary stretch, and you can easily miss the recovery days that follow. The fix is to set your rules before the crash happens, not during it. Decide in advance that you won't make emotional decisions on red days. Train yourself to think in percentages, not dollars. And remember, that time in the market matters more than trying to perfectly time it. Imagine two investors watching the exact same market crash. One sees the number drop by $8,000 and immediately imagines all the things that money could have bought. A vacation, a car payment, months of rent. The other sees the same drop and just thinks, that's an 8% pullback, and the market has always recovered from those before. Same event, same portfolio. Completely different experience because one of them is measuring in dollars and the other is measuring in context. The second investor sleeps better and historically tends to end up wealthier too, simply by staying invested through the noise. Number 7. Becoming the family bank. You hit 100K, and somehow, everyone knows you have money. A friend needs help with a car repair. A family member wants capital for a business idea. Someone needs a rent deposit. Someone asks for just a small loan. Lending money to people you're close to creates two separate risks at once, a financial risk and a relationship risk. If they don't pay you back, you lose the money. If you push for repayment, the relationship gets awkward, sometimes permanently. A simple framework here. If you can genuinely afford to lose the money, consider giving a small amount as a gift instead of a loan. No strings, no awkward follow-up. If you can't afford to lose it, it's okay to have a personal rule. Something as simple as, "I have a rule that I don't lend money," is a complete sentence. You don't owe anyone a longer explanation. One more thing to watch for: co-signing. When you co-sign a loan for someone, you're not just vouching for them. You're legally agreeing to pay their debt if they don't. That 100K you built can disappear fast if someone else's loan goes bad and your name is on it. There's a quiet irony here. You spent years saying no to yourself. No to the impulse purchase, no to the upgrade, no to the vacation you couldn't quite afford, in order to build this money. Then, the moment it exists, the hardest no of all becomes saying it to someone you love. But the boundary that protects your $100,000 from other people's emergencies is exactly as important as the boundary that protected it from your own spending habits along the way. It's the same discipline, just pointed in a different direction. Look at these 7 mistakes together, and a pattern shows up. Stopping your contributions, taking on unnecessary risk, obsessing over tiny optimizations, buying complicated products, expecting compounding to do all the work too early, panicking during normal volatility, and giving your money away through weak financial boundaries. Every single one of these is really the same story: abandoning the habits that got you here in the first place. The habits that built your first 100K are probably more valuable than the 100K itself. The money is just the byproduct. The behavior is the actual asset. Here's a simple framework to carry forward. Rule 1. Keep contributing. Don't let the milestone become an excuse to slow down. Rule 2. Don't confuse saving success with investing genius. They're different skills. Rule 3. Focus on growing your income. It often moves the needle more than fine-tuning your portfolio. Rule 4. Keep your financial products simple. If you can't explain it in 2 sentences, don't buy it. Rule 5. Know your actual number, not the internet's number, for when compounding starts carrying real weight. Rule 6. Don't let market volatility control your decisions. Set the rules before the storm, not during it. Rule 7. Protect your financial boundaries with people you care about. If you've already reached 100K, the goal isn't to suddenly get more aggressive. It's to avoid destroying the habits that got you there in the first place. Most people think wealth is built by finding the next great investment. In reality, wealth is usually built by refusing to abandon the habits that created it in the first place. Which of these 7 mistakes do you think is the most dangerous? Let me know in the comments. And if you're still working toward your first 100K, subscribe, because getting there is only the beginning.